Mosaic, a daily news program from Link TV, presents a selection of news reports from independent and state-controlled broadcasters from throughout the Middle East.
Welcome. The Organization of the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons in The Hague announced that Libya will start to get rid of its chemical weapons on Friday by destroying more than 3,000 unfilled bombs. Meanwhile, the United States lifted travel restrictions to Libya and is permitting a number of American companies to conduct business in Tripoli, thus expressing satisfaction with Libya's decision to stop its program of developing banned weapons. Washington is also allowing Libya to have a diplomatic presence in Washington. Armed fighters attacked a U.S. Army convoy in the area of Abu Ghraib near Baghdad. The United States forces responded by opening fire at the assailants. Two trucks that were transporting fuel caught on fire after explosive devices detonated on the road, while RPGs were also being fired. A neighboring house was damaged during the clashes, wounding the residents, including a number of children. Meanwhile, an explosion occurred at the strategic petroleum pipelines near the city of Samara, near northern Iraq. The pipeline has been partially destroyed and is still on fire. It remains unknown whether the fire was due to an accident or if it was intentional. The Russian Foreign Ministry summoned Qatar's ambassador to Moscow and handed him a harsh protest letter regarding the detainment of 3 Russians in Doha. They are being accused of being involved in the assassination of the former Chechen president, Salim Khan Yander Bayad, on February 13. A Qatari official stated that the Qatari authorities are accusing 2 Russians suspected of involvement in the assassination of the former Chechen president. They released the 3rd Russian suspect, who is also carrying a diplomatic passport. Macedonia's President Boris Tiriakovsky and 9 people accompanying him were killed in an airplane crash near Mostar in southern Bosnia. A source from the Bosnian police confirmed that the remains of the airplane and bodies were discovered at the site. The late Macedonian president was scheduled to attend an international investment conference in the city of Mostar. A number of presidents of several Balkan countries were also expected to attend the conference. The United States Secretary of State, Colin Powell, confirmed that negotiations in Beijing concerning North Korea's weapons program are positive, encouraging, and moving in the right direction. The South Korean envoy at the Six Nations talks in Beijing stated that China, Russia, and South Korea offered to help Pyongyang with its energy program if it freezes and dismantles the nuclear weapons program. It is expected that after this morning's closed-door Six Nations meeting, other bilateral meetings will be held. Meanwhile, North Korea denies that it is operating a uranium enrichment program, but the United States is insisting to include this issue in any resolution concerning this nuclear crisis. In Al-Hassimiyya, a number of Moroccans were injured during clashes with soldiers attempting to disperse crowds of protesters. 1,500 people were protesting the government's conduct after this week's catastrophic earthquake, killing 571 people. In addition, a number of angry protesters looted stores, accusing the government of withholding aid that was sent from Europe and other Arab countries. At the Hassimiyya airport, demonstrators blocked the passage of trucks transporting humanitarian aid.
نشرة إخبارية من قناة أبو ظبي حياكم الله. أعلن البيت الأبيض أن الولايات المتحدة قررت رفع حظر سفر مواطنين.
The White House announced that the United States has decided to lift travel ban to Libya. This comes in response to Tripoli's announcement that the Libyan government is dropping all programs to develop weapons of mass destruction. Washington also announced that it will permit Libya to establish a diplomatic office in the United States and allow American companies to resume their activities in Libya.
بإعلان البيت الأبيض قرار الولايات المتحدة رفع الحظر المفروض على سفر مواطنيها إلى ليبيا والسماح للشركات الأمريكية باستئناف أعمالها
In response to Tripoli's announcement to completely drop all programs of developing weapons of mass destruction, the White House announced its decision to end travel restrictions to Libya and allow American companies to conduct business in the country. For Libya, this marks the first reward of the bargains they struck with Washington and the West. Agreement on the Lockerbie incident and the Libyan nuclear program. Recently, Washington and London were distressed over statements made by the Libyan Prime Minister Shukri Ghanem, saying that Tripoli had only agreed to pay reparations to the families of the Lockerbie bombing victims to buy peace. The Libyan government quickly retracted this position by publishing a report containing a letter previously sent to the United Nations in 2003, in which they assume full responsibility for blowing up the BAM American airplane over the Scottish town of Lockerbie in 1988, killing 270 people.
والذي أسفر عن مقتل 270 شخصا. هذه التطورات دفعت بدورها رئيس الوزراء البريطاني توني بلير ليس فقط للتأكيد.
Due to these developments, the British Prime Minister Tony Blair emphasized that the settlement with Libya is moving in the right direction and explained that the Libyan Prime Minister's remarks were misunderstood.
When you read the actual transcript of the interview, it is vague, especially as to what he meant, but these ambiguities are no longer there.
يشار إلى أن التحول المفاجئ الذي غير.
He noted that the sudden change in the Libyan political direction comes as an effort to remove Libya from the list of countries described by the United States and the international community as terrorist states. Blair said that this is a part of a series of initiatives aimed to normalize relations with the international community, adding that Libya has already paid the toll for this change.
Now to developments in the West Bank, where at least 42 Palestinians were injured on Wednesday after Israeli occupation forces stormed 4 Palestinian banks. The Israelis claim the reason behind their action was to hunt for money sent from abroad to groups responsible for suicide bombings. Those injured were among a group of Palestinian protesters that confronted Israel's biggest raid in months into the West Bank city of Ramallah.
Israeli soldiers on Wednesday sealed off 4 banks for searches, including 2 branches of the Arab Bank. Israeli experts were reported to have checked through account details and documents were seized. While on the streets, Palestinian protesters threw stones on Israeli jeeps. Palestinian medical staff said Israeli soldiers had responded with some live rounds, but the Israelis have rejected the accusation. The raid was aimed at confiscating money from account holders linked to militant factions responsible for suicide bombings. In particular, it targeted funds that Israel claims have been sent from abroad to support its enemies. An aide to Palestinian President Yasser Arafat said the raid was a provocation. It came on the day that Arafat's Fatah faction was to start discussing reforms and whether to dismantle its militant group, the Al-Aqsa Martyrs Brigades, who were behind some attacks on Israelis. Security sources said the particular targets of the bank raids were the Islamic factions, Hamas and Islamic Jihad. At the same time, Israeli troops were looking for money sent by the Lebanese group Hezbollah. The offices of an Islamic charity in the West Bank city of Tulkarem were also raided on Wednesday. Computers and documents were taken from there too. Israeli troops have occasionally raided banks and Islamic charities during the conflict, saying their aim is to cut off funding for militants. But intelligence sources say it's next to impossible to cut off funding completely. Sosan Fikri, Dubai Television.
Meanwhile, in The Hague, the Arab League delivered a scathing attack against Israel's separation barrier. The League said the structure was a violation of international law. The 22-member group's testimony highlighted the third and final day of testimony before the International Court of Justice, examining the legality of the barrier.
2 blocks representing dozens of Muslim and other countries threw their weight behind the Palestinian challenge to the legality of Israel's West Bank separation barrier on Wednesday, as 3 days of hearings ended at the World Court. The Arab League and the Organization of the Islamic Conference, OIC, which represent about 20% of the world population, testified last in one of the highest profile cases in the court's 58-year history.
The wall is an affront to international law It adds to the suffering of the Palestinian people and affects the future of any settlement of the Palestinian cause. Therefore, it requires no less than the International Court of Justice to declare to us what legal consequences this war can have. We hope to draw from this inspiration on how this painful situation can be redressed.
The case in The Hague has underlined the stalemate in peacemaking efforts after more than 3 years of violence.
The war will affect the lives of some 17,000 Palestinians in the West Bank and 220,000 in East Jerusalem.
The Palestinians who want the court to declare the barrier illegal call it a land grab.
We feel very satisfied. We were satisfied before coming here because of the quality of the written statements, although we were not in a position to speak about the content of those written statements. Now we feel much more comfortable in reality because of the quality of the oral briefings, oral submissions put before the court. We think also that the Palestinian side did a good job in addition to other Arabs and friends who did participate.
The Jewish state claims it needs the barrier to keep out Palestinian suicide bombers who struck again on Sunday, the eve of the court hearing, killing 8 people.
We haven't, over the course of 2.5 days, heard a single reference to any Palestinian obligation whatsoever, to none of their undertakings in all of the agreements to fight terrorism, to stop incitement, to collect illegal weapons.
The World Court's 15 judges are expected to issue their opinion within months. Their decision is non-binding. It could influence world opinion, and the Palestinians hope it could pave the way for international sanctions against Israel. While they criticize the barrier's route, the United States and European Union also declined to appear, saying they fear a court ruling could harm peacemaking efforts. Hakam Khairallah, Dubai TV.
ينهي رئيس الدولة مشاركة ساف مساء اليوم اجتماعاته الرسمية مع الوزراء وكبار المسؤولين الفرنسيين.
Israeli President Moshe Katsav ended his official meetings with senior French officials.